Welcome to the Jenna Ellis Show, sponsored by Legacy Precious Metals. There has never been a better time to invest in precious metals. Visit legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com. Good evening and welcome to Jenna Ellis Tonight. So Speaker Mike Johnson is now promising to send a Ukraine funding package to the floor of Congress to be voted on. And I had Representative Bob Good, who is the chairman of the Freedom Caucus and, of course, congressman from the great state of Virginia, on my radio program earlier this morning to talk about this and the context of this aid package now coming to the floor after this massive spending bill that conservatives were not very pleased with. So this is what Representative Good had to say.
Good morning, Jenna. Great to be with you. Thanks for having me again. The problem is that we once again, a week ago Friday, or 10, 11 days ago now, we passed a major spending bill overwhelmingly supported by Democrats. It was the third or fourth consecutive one of these with the continuing resolutions, and then the two minibuses where they took the omnibus and split into two parts. One voted on March 8, one voted on March 22. So instead of passing 12 different appropriations bills, which were due last September 30, that's why we don't have the previous speaker anymore, but those were extended, last year's funding was extended after September 30 through a series of continuing resolutions or CRs, which kept in place the spending levels and the policies from when Pelosi and Schumer together controlled all of government with Biden. Finally, we finished funding fiscal year 24, which again was September 30 last year deadline, funding fiscal 24 by splitting those two, the omnibus into two minibuses. So, okay, well, at least we didn't do an omnibus. That would be the claim anyway. We split into two. However, once again, it was overwhelmingly supported by Democrats. Democrats, Jenna, did not even claim floor time in opposition to it. So what happens before you vote on a bill like that? You have debate time on the floor, designate half of it going to the majority in support of the bill, in theory, and half going to the minority in opposition to the bill. Once again, Democrats did not even take their time in opposition. So Freedom Caucus conservatives, led by my colleagues Chip Roy, Scott Perry, Matt Gaetz, Thomas Massey, and so forth, spoke against the bills on the House floor in opposition to our Republican majority that was passing them. However, they weren't even Republican majority bills. The first omnibus passed with 99% of Democrats on March 8. The second one passed with 90% of Democrats on March 22, most recently, because it increased spending by some $60-70 billion over when Democrats had full control, and it largely kept their policies in place. So why wouldn't they vote for it? A little bit of hope there that the first one, two-thirds of Republicans supported it on March 8. The most recent one, after work from folks like yourself, Conservative Nation, conservative voices across the country, Freedom Caucus members and so forth, we were able to keep it to a minority of the majority, which means we broke the rule that we have in place, the Republican conference rule, that we're not supposed to bring legislation to the floor that's not supported by a majority of Republicans. 101 Republicans voted for it. 112 voted against it. So that was some progress. I suspect that was because of primary season. Some of them are concerned about having a primary challenge from the right, from a conservative, from a Freedom Caucus fighter in their respective districts. Also, Jenna, some, like Mike Rogers from Alabama and Austin Scott from Georgia, they switched their votes against the bill because it didn't have a pay increase for Congress. That's something they were willing to fight for, a pay increase for Congress. So they were going to vote for the bill. They didn't have a problem with the bill that increased spending and kept the Pelosi-Schumer policies in place, but they didn't want to vote for the bill if it didn't contain a pay increase for Congress. So that's where we are. We failed to fight. We failed to secure the border. We failed to use the leverage of the power of the purse to say, no, we're not going to continue to fund the policies that we campaigned against. We're not going to increase spending. What we should have done was pass a Republican bill out of the House that reflected Republican priorities, Republican spending cuts, border security, and then had a fight with the Senate when the Senate said no, which would have resulted in a temporary partial government shutdown and to see who the American people were behind and to see who had the resolve to fight for their position. And then you would meet somewhere in the middle. That's what should have happened. That's not what happened.
So my question is this, what good are Republicans then? What good is the majority? And we've been talking about this on the show, I think, for a while, to say, okay, if nothing else that Republicans get accomplished in the majority, nothing else but stopping the radical leftist Marxism from the Democrats, that to me would be an accomplishment, because we only have one half of one branch of government right now, but that's enough to at least stymie the Democrats. So what can we expect from a Republican majority and under Speaker Mike Johnson's leadership? Because it doesn't seem like a lot. And here's what Bob Good had to say on that issue.
Well, you are exactly right. What should have happened is, again, the Speaker should lead the Republican conference, say, this is the direction we're going. I need you to follow me. Let's go into battle together. The American people are behind us. We've got to deliver on what we've said. We've got to show a difference between us and the Democrats. We're not going to continue to fund this government's border invasion after what happened in Texas with hundreds rushed border personnel 2 weeks ago now and mob rushed their way into the country and overwhelmed physically, violently border personnel, setting the new standard, I guess. If you want to get in the country, there's any obstruction, I'll just overrun it. Hey, we're not going to fund that. This is not a third world country. This is not a banana republic. This doesn't happen yet. We should have refused to fund that border invasion. And if not only that alone, and then, like you said, you're not going to get everything that you want in divided government when you have one half of one branch. However, what we are essentially doing is figuring out what the Senate will take, what the president will sign, and we're passing that out of the House. So we have this seamless transition with no disruptions or discomfort or temporary pauses or risks of a government shutdown, so that we show that we can govern and we can work together and we can get along. And then we just move towards now, September 30, the fiscal year 25 deadline is there. So what would make you or someone, a conservative across the country, a Republican voter, think that we're going to do anything different over the next 6 months between now and September 30 to fund the government for fiscal year 25, which again is due by September 30? Because if the Senate says no, then you're butting up into an election, into a potential government shutdown again. Does that mean we're going to cave and surrender once again and just do what the Senate wants to do and promise voters that we'll start to fight for them in January 25 if we have the House, if we have the Senate, and if we have the White House? But then, Jenna, the excuse will be we don't have 60 votes in the Senate. So at some point, you've got to be willing to say no. You've got to be willing to take some risks. You've got to be willing to fight. That's not what we've demonstrated a willingness to do.
Guys, this is why elections matter. This is why primaries matter, so that you can get good, solid Republicans in, that not just as Republicans in name only, so that we can make sure to have a good, solid majority to advance conservative principles. We'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis Tonight. Throughout history, there are clear moments that define our nation's path. And now you can own a piece of that history. I'm thrilled to announce the official Newt Gingrich contract with America Coin from our friends at Legacy Precious Metals in partnership with Speaker Gingrich. This limited edition 1 ounce 99.99% silver coin commemorates the historic victory in 1994 when the Republican Party, under Speaker Gingrich's guidance, took control of Congress. The Newt Gingrich contract with America Coin also symbolizes the transformative political platform that led to the landmark achievements like the overhaul of the U.S. welfare system and the Balanced Budget Act. This is a limited edition coin that will sell out. So whether you're looking for the perfect gift or you want to own a piece of history, act fast before they run out. The Newt Gingrich contract with America Coin is more than an investment. It's a tribute to honest government and America. You can order it online at newtgingrichsilvercoin.com. That's newtgingrichsilvercoin.com and use promo code Jenna, that's JENNA, to get $10 off your purchase. Go to newtgingrichsilvercoin.com now. A lot of legal news making headlines this week with former President Trump and Hunter Biden. So how this is going to impact 2024, we will see. But let's start first with the former president. So this coming from Trending Politics. The headline is Trump posts the $175 million bond in his civil case. former President Donald Trump secured a $175 million bond payment late Monday night, staving off the potential seizure of New York skyscrapers, golf courses, and other properties by the state's attorney general. The money arrived from bond company Knight Specialty Insurance Company, according to ABC News, which said in a statement that it made sound financial sense to buttress a former president who saw his net worth swell by several $billions in the past few weeks, likely referring, of course, to Truth Social. This is what we do at Knight Insurance, and we're happy to be able to accommodate the ex-president in this situation. Owner Don Henke told ABC News, "I'd say it's more of a business decision, but I happen to be a supporter also." So let's welcome in our Legal Eagle panel, Mike Donnelly, who is a constitutional law professor, and Brett Tolman, who is a former U.S. attorney for the state of Utah. So gentlemen, thanks so much. Brett, we'll start with you. So this bond payment was reduced from the over $400 million it initially was. That's great, but is this even still reasonable for $175 million?
There's really nothing reasonable about this case. It's a perfect study in what happens when you don't really think there are any rules and you have all the authority with very little accountability or transparency. And that's what we have. We have a judge that, is trying to defend an early on decision, which, seems devoid from careful analysis of the values of the properties. You have a prosecutor who is bringing, albeit a civil case, is attempting to show that there was a fraud that occurred at the hands of the valuation by Donald Trump. The thing that is remarkable to me, Jenna, is there's not a single person in this country, not even this judge included, who really truly believes that Mar-a-Lago isn't valued at an enormously high number right now. And when you have the banks that aren't victims to come in and say, let's have a $400 million bond that then gets reduced to $175 million. And let's keep in mind, so that folks understand what's happening here. In essence, a bond company is saying, you know what, we will make good on this amount if Donald Trump loses the appeal or loses this case. We're comfortable because he has such assets. So the great irony here is a bond company is willing to make issue a bond at an outrageously high number based on the strength of the assets of this individual, which is contrary to the finding of the judge. So nothing is normal. Really glad you've got Mike on this panel as well, because I love hearing his analysis of legal issues. But to me, I sit back and I marvel at a government run amok with no transparency or accountability.
Yeah, well, and so well said. I mean, this bond company is now the next willing victim. And so, according to the leftist theory by Letitia James, so is she going to now, potentially indict him over using the bond company for overvaluing his assets? I mean, where does this stop? It's a little ridiculous. But Mike, what's your perspective on this? Because there was another headline that I read that Jon Stewart, the former late night comedian, he had a property that was valued at a little over, $1 million, like 1.7, something like that. And he sold it for something like 17 million. So what's the difference here? Why aren't we seeing more of these types of indictments?
Well, we probably should, but it's great to be on with Brett, also a former U.S. attorney who understands what it means to prosecute people for real crimes and real problems. Jenna, I think the bond company doesn't have much to worry about, because I think that the president is going to win an appeal. A $454 million judgment is outrageous. It's confiscatory. It is exactly what the Supreme Court has held to be problematic when the government is going after people and seeking these kinds of fines. And I think President Trump is going to be able to look back and thank Justice Ginsburg from a 2019 Supreme Court opinion. It was a unanimous opinion, by the way, written by Justice Ginsburg, basically asserting that excessive fines applies to state cases. And in that case, a gentleman who was being prosecuted for a $10,000 fine had his Land Rover seized. It was worth $42,000. So what were the actual damages in this case? The judge found $454 million based on a very tenuous causational change, saying, well, if the president, had these profits from over these years, maybe it would have been $454 million. But I think there's a lot of problems with this judge's ruling, and I think the president's going to win his appeal.
Well, let's hope so, and let's hope that there still is some justice. But in the last 2 minutes we have with this panel, Brett, I also want to get your analysis on the headline that former Trump aide Hope Hicks is going to be testifying, according to some news outlets and sources, in the upcoming Alvin Bragg indictment, the hush money payment trial. And reports have also said that she testified in front of the grand jury. And yet, a lot of people now on the MAGA side are slamming Hope Hicks, who I think is just responding to a subpoena. Why is it always the presumption that if someone who may have information is subpoenaed and testifies, that they're quote unquote flipping on Trump, or have something negative to say, or that if they just tell the truth in the context of a courtroom, that somehow that's going to hurt Trump?
Well, most of it is a bit of ignorance as to what's actually happening. You're right, Jenna. There's subpoena power, and there really is no way to fight a valid subpoena issued for you to come in and testify, whether it's in front of the grand jury. I mean, you can take the Fifth Amendment, but the problem with that is, if you really don't have a Fifth Amendment, basis to invoke in front of the grand jury, then the judge is either not going to buy it, or is going to, the prosecution is going to give immunity very quickly and then force you to testify. There's nothing you can do. But I think the more important issue here is remember, be careful thinking that a witness is all for one side or all for another side. Most oftentimes, witnesses on the stand can be very problematic, even for those who call the witness. I have many witnesses that I thought were going to make my case significantly stronger, and by the end of the testimony, I regretted that I called them to the stand. So I think it's early on to judge this. I think we need to remember that witnesses are commanded to be in court, and there's no perfect witness for one side or the other.
Yeah, really well said. And, maybe that is a call to our audience to have a little bit more rationality and patience. But, patience isn't really a virtue that most people, at least on social media, have. But I think a lot of our Salem audience does. But we'll be right back with more with our Legal Eagle panel coming up right after this. As you know, my friend Mike Lindell has a passion to help everyone get the best sleep of their life. He didn't stop by simply creating the best pillow. Mike created the Giza Dream bed sheets. They look and feel great, which means an even better night's sleep for me, which is crucial for my busy schedule. Mike found the world's best cotton. It is ultra soft and breathable, but extremely durable. Mike's Giza sheets come with a 60-day money-back guarantee and a 10-year warranty. The Giza Dream Sheets come in a variety of sizes and colors. Mike's latest incredible deal is the sale of the year. For a limited time, you will receive 50% off the Giza Dream Sheets. You will also receive a set for as low as $29.98. So go to mypillow.com, click on the radio podcast square, and use the promo code Jenna. There you will find not only this amazing offer, but also deep discounts on all MyPillow products, including the MyPillow 2.0 mattress topper, which I have and I love, the MyPillow kitchen towel sets, and now even flannel sheets and so much more. We definitely need flannel sheets for as crazy as all of this weather has been lately. So go to mypillow.com and make sure you use the promo code Jenna or call 1-800-564-8475. That's 1-800-564-8475 and use the promo code Jenna. And we're back with our Legal Eagle panel of attorneys and experts, Mike Donnelly and Brett Tolman. And gentlemen, let's go to the Democrat side with Hunter Biden, this coming from Trending Politics. Just in, Hunter Biden smacked down by a judge. A federal judge in California has rejected all attempts by Hunter Biden to see his tax charges dismissed after the embattled first son claimed in court filings that the counts against him were politically motivated. Citing 8 separate motions by Hunter's lawyers, Judge Mark Scarsi reasoned in his ruling that the evidence supplied by Hunter, mostly newspaper articles, quote, contain multiple levels of hearsay and do not advance the argument that Republicans pressured Justice Department Special Counsel David Weiss to treat him unfairly. The motion is remarkable in that it fails to include a single declaration, exhibit, or request for judicial notice. He wrote it according to The Hill. Instead, Defendant cites portions of various internet news sources, social media posts, and legal blogs. These citations, however, are not evidence. So, Mike Donnelly, let's start with you. Is there two standards of justice here? Should the Democrats be very concerned that this indictment wasn't kicked out on the basis of Politico and NBC and all of these people trying to bolster Hunter Biden?
Oh, I see. So if you are the Biden family, you can claim it's politically motivated, but if you're the Trump family, you can't. Is that how it works? Yes,
that's how it works. I'm reliably informed, yes, that's how it works.
Yes. I mean, anybody looking at this can see how things work, and it's honestly pretty disgusting. As an American citizen, as an attorney, as somebody who cares about this country, I am about fed up with the way this is going. And, you look at what's happening to the president, and you compare them. There really isn't a lot of comparison, in my opinion. But what I want to know is, why isn't somebody, and I'd love to hear Brett's take on this, why isn't someone using the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act? Why isn't Congress talking about that? And why isn't someone talking about conspiracy related to those things, or the current act? So, yeah, can we stop with the politically motivated prosecution and get on with fixing this country?
Yeah, I mean, I would love that as well. But Brett, your take on all of this, and why isn't Congress doing anything in terms of actually pursuing impeachment of Joe Biden on what I think are several options of sufficient legal bases? And certainly when the Democrats wanted to just pretend that it was totally a political invocation of the power of impeachment, that didn't stop them from impeaching Donald Trump twice. But now, the rule of law must apply to a politically motivated theater when it comes to Joe Biden.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack here. I starting with the Hunter Biden case itself, I have maintained, and I'll continue to scream at the top of my lungs, that if DOJ followed its own internal guidelines, if the U.S. Attorney's Office followed the U.S. Attorney's manuals, and they followed the Ashcroft and even the Holder memos, they would have to bring charges against the Biden family related to the conspiracy that involved all of the players that funneled money and distributed among multiple corporations, dummy corporations, all for a service that doesn't actually exist, a company that doesn't actually have any real legitimate business. And had they treated it the same as they have done in many other corrupt organization prosecutions, you're looking at life in prison for multiple individuals wrapped up in this conspiracy because of the dollar amount. And in the federal system, you are sentenced pursuant to the intended loss. So if he took 10, 15 million from other countries and they funneled it to individuals, what was their intended loss? Was it 30, 40, 50 million? You would be looking at an incredibly long sentence in federal prison that involved a conspiracy that had multiple tentacles. And when Mike says he's sick of it and fed up, now you fast forward to what's happened, and we've appointed a special prosecutor that got their hand caught in a cookie jar trying to do a sweetheart deal. So they came back at it after whistleblowers revealed on the tax side. But I'll continue to argue with folks about this. What they did was half of the investigation they typically would do. They failed to do what's called the sourcing side of the investigation, which is to actually take the entirety where the money came from and investigate that side of things, as opposed to not just the money that came in and then the failure to pay taxes. So multiple levels, this fails the sniff test, and it is offensive to any of us that have been in the trenches and worked for DOJ. As far as I'm concerned, the Department of Justice, its fairness, its equity is dead. It is now driven by a petty, individual that is using and wielding such power for political gain. On the side of the impeachment, you have enough in this instance to actually have a real impeachment. You have enough to investigate. And a conviction. I think the Senate would have a very difficult time not convicting if you had honesty about what has been revealed. And, thank goodness for Comer and Jordan and others. Without them, and even though, I'm not a huge fan of Congress, for many years I haven't, without them actually exposing some of this and doing the job that DOJ should have been doing, we would never know the full extent and scope of this conspiracy.
Yeah, well, and Mike, so that begs the question, why isn't Speaker Mike Johnson pursuing this? It seemed like before he was Speaker, he had a lot more gusto and a lot more guts, frankly, to put some things forward. But now it seems his priorities are calling Ukraine funding to the floor, just passing this massive spending package that fewer Republicans voted for it than against it. So why aren't we seeing the Republicans use their majority for the one thing that they do control, which is the process of impeachment, and forcing Joe Biden to answer that in the Senate?
It is troubling, Jenna, to see that. Look, I don't know Mike Johnson personally, but I do like him, a lot about him, what I know about him. And I can understand he has a razor thin majority and he's trying to keep together a herd of cats. So I can understand some of the difficulties there. And we've got an election that we need to win here. So I got you. I'm not for the Ukraine funding. I would like to see a much more aggressive stance on those things. And I think Congress is working on the impeachment, which it should be, but we're not going to convict with a Democrat-controlled Senate. So, and if Biden wins re-election, which hopefully he will not, but if he does, I think there is a very good chance that he could be convicted if the Republicans can take the Senate and Congress is able to get an impeachment. So there's a lot of factors going on here, I think, and I'm a lawyer, not a political analyst, although I'll try to play one on TV. But let's go, Congress. Let's keep unearthing the facts here. Let's look at this and foreign corrupt practices and conspiracy. Let's start talking about that, as Brett said. And thank you, Brett, for bringing that analysis.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, gentlemen. You are two of my favorite people to have on the Legal Eagle panel. And we'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis Tonight. Throughout history, there are clear moments that define our nation's path, and now you can own a piece of that history. I'm thrilled to announce the official Newt Gingrich contract with America coin from our friends at Legacy Precious Metals in partnership with Speaker Gingrich. This limited edition 1 ounce 99.99% silver coin commemorates the historic victory in 1994 when the Republican Party, under Speaker Gingrich's guidance, took control of Congress. The Newt Gingrich contract with America coin also symbolizes the transformative political platform that led to the landmark achievements like the overhaul of the U.S. welfare system and the Balanced Budget Act. This is a limited edition coin that will sell out. So whether you're looking for the perfect gift or you want to own a piece of history, act fast before they run out. The Newt Gingrich contract with America coin is more than an investment. It's a tribute to honest government and America. You can order it online at newtgingrichsilvercoin.com. That's newtgingrichsilvercoin.com and use promo code Jenna, that's JENNA, to get $10 off your purchase. Go to newtgingrichsilvercoin.com now. On Easter Sunday, devout atheist Richard Hawkins actually told the LBC radio over in the UK that he considers himself a cultural Christian, but not a believer. This was really fascinating in terms of the cognitive dissonance of his worldview, wanting to live in the benefits of a Christian society, but not actually seeing that a Christian society requires Christians who live out their faith. But listen to what he had to say.
Well, I must say I was slightly horrified to hear that Ramadan is being promoted instead. I do think that we are culturally a Christian country. I call myself a cultural Christian. I'm not a believer, but there's a distinction between being a believing Christian and being a cultural Christian. And so, I love hymns and Christmas carols, and I sort of feel at home in the Christian ethos. I feel that we are a Christian country in that sense. It's true that statistically the number of people who actually believe in Christianity is going down, and I'm happy with that. But I would not be happy if, for example, we lost all our cathedrals and our beautiful parish churches. So I count myself a cultural Christian. I think it would matter if we substituted any alternative religion. That would be truly dreadful.
Well, which brings me to my supplementary point, which is that, as we know, church attendance is plummeting, but the erection of mosques across Europe, I think 6,000 are under construction, and there are many more, are being planned. So do you regard that as a problem? Do you think that matters?
Yes, I do, really. I mean, I have to choose my words carefully. I mean, if I had to choose between Christianity and Islam, I choose Christianity every single time. I mean, it seems to me to be a fundamentally decent religion in a way that I think Islam is not.
I think you're going to have to explain why you say that, Professor Dawkins. Why is Islam fundamentally not decent like Christianity?
Yes, I mean, the way women are treated. I mean, Christianity is not great about that. It's had its problems with female vicars and female bishops and things. But there's an active hostility to women, which is promoted, I think, by the holy books of Islam. I'm not talking about individual Muslims, who, of course, are quite different. But the doctrines of Islam, the Hadith and the Quran, is fundamentally hostile to women, hostile to gays. And I find that I like to live in a culturally Christian country, although I do not believe a single word of the Christian faith.
Wow. Well, let's bring in Walker Wildmon, who is the vice president of the American Family Association, where I host Jenna Ellis in the morning on the American Family Radio Network. So Walker, your response to this really intriguing, I think, dichotomy with what Richard Hawkins says about cultural Christianity and the benefits versus not actually believing in the rest of the inherently internally consistent worldview of Christianity.
Yeah, this was rather shocking. And when I watched the clip, this is my fourth time watching it, I'm pinching myself, because here you have a devout atheist, well-known evolutionist, and he's saying on live television in the UK that, the Christian way is actually a pretty good way. It's shocking. Usually you get more hostility from unbelievers that are professed unbelievers in this realm, but the exact opposite in this interview. So rather shocking, but really an admission and recognition of reality. That's what this is. And that is when you build a society on Christian values, it typically goes well for everybody. Largely speaking, if you want law and order, if you want human flourishing, if you want economic prosperity, then let's choose Judeo-Christian values as the framework to build a society. That is the American experiment and the Western experiment, and it is working quite well compared to other nations in history. So America has her issues, but when you put her up on a scale against other nations in world history, America is flourishing and is doing quite well. And Richard Hawkins here admits that. He admits, look, hey, if I have to pick what kind of society I have to live in, I'm going to pick the society with a bunch of Christians as opposed to Muslims or other people.
Yeah, which is really fascinating that, in the West that was built on the foundations of Christianity, the concern that he has is because the census is now showing that there are more people who are Muslims and, in other worldviews than Christians in the UK. And he sees that as problematic. And yet you see here in America, the cultural Marxists that are trying purposefully to excise God from society, to undermine the Judeo-Christian ethos, as he puts it, that's at the foundation of our law and justice system. And so what does this tell you, Walker, for the Democrats who are upholding this Biden regime as if that's somehow good, and yet we're seeing how justice and fairness and all of these other things are really crumbling in America, I think because we are abandoning the Judeo-Christian ethic.
Yeah, this is the dilemma that we're having, where that's really coming to the forefront of our culture, where people that aren't Christians, that don't call themselves Christians, don't believe in the Bible, but they're looking at options on worldview and they're going, Christianity is kind of a good deal. It's kind of a good situation for everybody, even for unbelievers, because we don't persecute unbelievers. We're not out to force our religion on people. We hope and we desire that everyone professes Christ, but in reality, in a normal society, that doesn't typically take place. So Richard Dawkins is admitting the obvious. We even had Joe Rogan recently say, we need Jesus. That's Joe Rogan. He's an atheist. So I think more atheists and agnostics are looking at the trajectory of Western civilization, and they're saying, you know what, we probably need to preserve this because it leads to human flourishing.
Yeah, and I could not agree more that the basis of the Christian worldview is the only method of law and justice and civil society, truth in politics that will lead to human flourishing. And so, just in the last about 45 seconds we have here, Walker, what does that say to you for the Christians who are hesitant to engage in civil society and politics? I think that that is not only our right, but it's an obligation to preserve the foundations of our American heritage.
Yeah, that's right. Our faith and worldview should play an integral part of every facet of American life, whether it be in private or in public, or even when we go vote. So it's inherently critical to preserving Western civilization so that future generations can benefit and experience this amazing experiment called America.
Yeah, so well said. And it's really interesting sometimes that even atheists can get it right. But we'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis Tonight. All right. And finally tonight, let's welcome in our next guest, Ron Coleman, who is the host of Coleman Nation podcast and also an attorney at the Dillon Law Group. And so, Ron, we had talked just briefly before in the break that the segment that we thought we were going to do was on the whole P. Diddy lawsuit and all of that. But both you and I were kind of like, neither of us really know anything about it because nobody cares. And I think that that's actually hilarious. So I just wanted to say for all of the audience, we're going to pivot topics here because I think, Ron, this actually shows a much bigger issue that pop culture maybe just doesn't even matter to conservatives.
It doesn't. I mean, certainly in my house, it's, we don't have a TV. We don't really play popular music. I'm on the internet more than other members of my family, and I, usually need to have the cultural vocabulary to discuss issues like this on shows like yours. But we are not particularly inclined coming out of the gate to follow the careers of these extraordinary symbols of achievement. I mean, listen, some of the people who have come up through the music world, including rap and hip hop, have built extraordinary careers for themselves. But regardless of the particular music style or whether it's other forms of art, the popular culture is a wasteland. I mean, it's great when you find programs or I don't know, really musically, maybe musically great things are happening that are gratifying and that you can learn. I don't mean learn from it. Life doesn't have to be a social studies project. The arts are meant to be enjoyed and appreciated and to broaden one's soul. But this kind of slides into our typical political focus. It is amazing when you consider how many political statements by people who are known for nothing other than entertaining people are considered to be newsworthy. I don't know if P. Diddy was one of those people, but
well, and a lot of the headlines that I've seen, and a lot of the headlines I've seen, focused on the fact that Prince Harry was named in this lawsuit, and it's a civil suit, right? And people are suggesting this is going to bring Diddy down and all this other stuff, and I'm just like, okay, I mean, does this really impact, political life? Does this impact, our lives as Americans? Not really. But it's fascinating to see that some people are actually paying more attention to this story than they are to the spending bill that was up in Congress, or what's actually going on in civil society. And I think that ultimately is the problem. So I was actually mildly amused, and it just heightened my respect for you, Ron, that you were like, I don't really know anything about this, because I was like, I don't either, and I don't think it really matters. So
Well,
so instead, let me ask you. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. Well, yeah, I just did an episode. I just dropped an episode with a woman named Kristen Jackson, who's the founder and president of a search engine called freespoke.com. I'm not a paid commercial, representative for them, but when I went to test out, and they're trying to do an unbiased search engine. Now, every search engine drives you, when you go to their homepage, they drive you to their own coverage of news. And when I went to FreeSpoke, what I saw was they had very little celebrity news.
Mm,
And
it's a good
they
thing.
actually have a news section, and they have a left-leaning selection and what they regard as a centrist and right-leaning section, but very little being paid to celebrity news. And that's a development we should hope for to see a lot more of, because
Mhm.
it is just the wrong focus for everyone.
Yeah, and what passes for news these days, and what people choose to cover on news programs like this one, really does matter, and especially in terms of curating your content. I mean, it's been widely known that Google algorithms, will push certain stories to the top and suppress other stories, and so for the kids who've grown up in just the Google era, it's not this unbiased filter that actually give you what are the quote unquote best results. It's the ones that those search engines want you to see first. And what we talk about as far as news, maybe isn't necessarily newsworthy. But before the end of the segment, I did want to get your take, Ron, on the story that came out over Easter that Joe Biden refused to allow, and the White House refused to allow children participating in the Easter art. And like the drawings of the Easter eggs, he refused to allow religious symbolism, which in my view is a violation of the First Amendment for a government to say, if you're a Christian or a Jewish kid that comes there, that you can't put a cross or Star of David or anything like that on your Easter egg. It has to be totally secular.
Well,
That's
no
really
Jewish kid
offensive,
has any
frankly.
business at the Easter egg competition. That's not one of our things. But I will tell you that AP in one, which is one of the White House's press offices, the Associated Press, ran a debunker column, and they claim, and I really have to say claim with, I should do what they do with things that Republicans say, like they claim without evidence, but maybe they do have evidence, that the order from the White House to avoid religious symbolism or overt religious symbolism in the Easter egg or the Easter art or the Easter egg art contest is no different from what it has been in the past. And I must admit, it's never been a particularly big issue for me. Easter is not. That's actually kind of a holiday where we kind of try to keep a low profile. I'll tell you something that I didn't realize the extent to which Easter, even today, is almost, it's not directly anymore, but it is still indirectly more really coordinates with the Jewish holiday of Passover, which makes sense, of course, because of the historical events. So we're always obviously cognizant of Easter because it comes out around the same time as Passover. But what would you expect? I mean, this White House, I don't know if
Yeah.
they did something radically different from what the White House has done in the past,
But I
but
can't
you can be sure
imagine
that if they
that
did it,
this was. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that this was actually what was going on during the Trump White House. But more power to the Christian kids that want to go and participate and actually expose their faith and participate as Christians. That's all the time we have for Jenna Ellis tonight. I'll see you tomorrow.